about disability in sex toys, because I didn't really realize that not all sex toys are accessible.
No, a massive percentage aren't. So as I alluded to in like the last episode, obviously I've been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long to realize a lot of products weren't accessible. Like for me, I would struggle if I was doing a demonstration about certain products, I would struggle with the chargers, I'd struggle with the buttons
Yeah.
and things like that. So that's when I started focusing on looking for accessible products. And I think this is where companies have a place to play in the market. They don't, and the problem is there is some companies still in the industry who do not see the worth in the purple pound and how big a market it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even had a company tell me, oh, we don't want to really market it as a product for the disabled, even though it's an accessible product. They don't want to market it as that because it might affect the rest of their market. So
Okay, there was silence just there, and that's because my mouth is literally wide open. Because that kind of thing, that is ableism in its most finest form.
yeah.
But secondly, you are so right when we think about the purple pound. Now, for those who don't necessarily know what the purple pound is, the purple pound is a spending power that disabled people have. So I think there's a crazy amount of money that disabled people could contribute to companies and shopping and all that kind of stuff. So where you put your money is where you put your purple pound if you are, if you classify yourself as a disabled person. And you're right, there is so much money in the purple pound that companies completely miss out on. But it's amazing that someone said that to you, because had it been any other ism,
Yep.
that wouldn't have been said. But because it's about disability, it was.
I tried to like have a conversation about how they could really market it like at this disabled market because it's such an accessible product, but they're not interested in doing it because they're just worried how it would have an effect. It wouldn't, for me, it wouldn't have any effect. I can't see how they think it would. Hopefully they might change their mind as time goes on as I have more conversations with them. I don't know. I very much doubt it. But it's not quite often when you see people talking about what's accessible and what isn't, like in the sex toy industry, they'll just always focus on buttons. Or it needs bigger buttons, or it needs different buttons. And it's not just about that. They need to start looking at packaging, because some boxes are really hard to get into, so you need to look at things like that. Looking at the instructions, can you download them in an audio file, for example?
Mm-hmm.
And even something that I've only learned over the last, I would say, 18 months is for people who are neurodiverse about how the vibration can affect them and the smell and things like that as well.
This is things that you don't necessarily think of straight off the beat, but as soon as someone says it to you, you're like, of course.
Yeah.
It's obvious, but it's also not obvious.
So you can understand why big multi-million-pound companies don't look at these things, because it's probably once you start looking at one, you've got to look at them all. And you're never going to make, I think it's going to be always a struggle to make a completely accessible product, because there's always going to be someone who won't be able to use it for a multitude of reasons. But we just need to have conversation about how we can make products more accessible, and look at why they need to be. So, for example, like if someone's in a wheelchair, can they use something they can sit on, for example, more of a humping toy rather than something that's penetrable? If someone's got any issues like with their vulva, does it have to be something that penetrates? Can it just be something more of a clitoral stimulator?
But these are the conversations that we need to be having, because there are so many things that you have just said in like not even like a 2-minute period, and I'm like, boom, 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 boom. So many things have just gone off in my brain, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I would never have thought of that in 100 million years. But because we've never necessarily had that conversation, and I've never had this conversation with anyone else, where do you go to have these conversations if you need to find out about this information? Like where is this information for people who don't necessarily have penetrative sex or are not able to, or, you know, having like heteronormative sex isn't their thing, but they're still disabled, where do they go to have these conversations or listen or learn about what can be used where and anywhere?
This is the problem. There isn't a massive amount of that out there. There is Enhance the UK, who do a fab job of talking about sex and disability. But again, it's having people to reach out. I'm happy for anyone ever want to ask a question, just send me an email, drop me a message. I will always answer what I can. Because we need to have these like safe spaces as well. And I often get people saying to me, they will talk to me about sex and disability because I'm disabled myself. They don't want to have them conversations with someone who isn't disabled as well.
Yeah, that was another point that I was going to bring up actually, but I'll bring that up after you've finished. Sorry, I've just completely.
Yeah, and it's the same with sex education. There's such a problem because there's such a lack of male sex educators, especially who go into schools. So this is why we need to change things as well. So because young lads need to learn about respect, consent in a good way instead of watching porn. But a lot of young lads don't feel comfortable having sex education lessons with a female teacher. But there isn't the male teachers who are willing to do it. I have so many, when I've done sessions with talking about sex and disability, and sex toys and things like that, the amount of male people who were there are like, oh, I would never do this if it was someone female talking about it. It's because you're a lad talking about it. They're happy to ask me awkward questions.
Yeah.
But I also don't alienate any females who are there either because they're happy to talk to me about it as well. Hey!